Thank you very much. I'm just delighted to be here, and it's wonderful to see so many of you here. I'm grateful to all of the panelists here, and in particular to Gail Davidson, who's been who suggested last spring that we must go to the Vancouver Public Library because it would be a great place to have an event like this. So I'm delighted to be here. I just wanted to say that we're really pleased that Kat Norris, who is of Coast Salish ancestry and is a survivor of the reservation and residential school system, is here to give us our blessing and to drum us into our evening. So I'll just introduce Kat.
Thank you. So it's really good to be here. I just wanted to introduce my young relative, Alice. And I'm teaching her powwow dancing. And so tonight I thought I would not cancel our little class, but to also introduce her to some of the other things that I do. So I just wanted her to come and stand with me. So she's a really awesome dancer. So one of these times you guys have to come to our Tuesday night powwow night at the Friendship Center. It's our social and cultural and our practice night, and it's located at 1607 East Hastings. And I don't often prepare things, but I've been really busy, as Sid probably can tell you. I've been doing a lot of different things. So to start off with, I'd really like to welcome you to the Salish territory of the Squamish people, the Musqueam people, and the Tsleil-Waututh. And with that, I'd like to raise my hands. We can raise our hands up. Say Haichka Siam. Nimo Ai Squale. Thank you to the Creator. It's a very beautiful day today. So I did prepare a little bit of something. I want to welcome you. We are here today to celebrate the fight for justice. This is just one incident of thousands. Every day, people's human rights are infringed upon all across the world. One would assume that in polite KK Canada, that the rights of all would be carefully considered and not infringed upon. But Canada was built upon the infringement and genocide and acts of discrimination and marginalization of not only our people, but especially the Indigenous people of this Turtle Island. We are so colonized and separated, afraid of the flag, mouths taped shut, that by the time we speak up and realize what has happened, we should have done or said something before first blood. In our country, on September 13th, 2007, 144 countries voted yes to the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, setting out what constitutes the minimum standards for the survival, dignity, and well-being of the Indigenous peoples of the world. This declaration was to protect us and our rights to land, etc. Canada and the US were two of the last holdouts to sign, only signing upon world watchdogs, trying to ensure that Indigenous consultation before government decisions are made to protect our land and identity, and to ensure informed consent, and to participate, not just react to decisions made upon us. I don't have my glasses, so that's why I'm squinting. But much remains the same, especially in terms of extraction due to pipelines and mining. Money still talks. Money, trade, and relationships with other countries signed with the prenup. The media, just another government entity controlling the spin to which mining agreements and such are signed. Controlling how society sees those of us who fight for our rights. As Indigenous people, we must learn to stand together and respect each other and not just walk by with our heads turned the other way because we don't know what to do. So I just wanted to say that right now, as Indigenous people, it's time for us to work together. And I'm very proud to stand here in support of the fight for the rights of this young man whose rights were impinged upon, especially because he was a young man, you know, and the fact that the country didn't support him is something that we are used to as Indigenous people. So I want to raise my hands up to all of you that are here to support, and those that have fought so hard for this young person. You know, he's just one person, but sometimes, like with Frank Paul's death, you know, it's really sad that someone has to sacrifice their lives in order to make change. And unfortunately, that's something that's happened here. So I fully support the Indigenous Action Movement supports this fight. So good work to all of you. And I'm going to sing a song right now. And it's a medicine song. And what we ask generally is for those who can stand. And it's a blessing song for all of you. It's very Salish, so I'll sing it for you.
This is entirely happenstance, but today is Omar Khadr's 26th birthday, and he has been in Guantanamo since 2002, so that's a 10-year sentence. Several years of that, the first 2 years, there were no charges, and fairly recently, in October of 2010, he plea bargained because it was clear that if he didn't plea bargain, he would be sentenced to 40 years. So he plea bargained in a military commission, which was an extraordinarily idiosyncratic court. In fact, it wasn't a legal court recognized by any country in the world. It's a military commission that tries people that are basically, the case against them often is based on evidence that would not be admissible in a regular court. Omar Khadr, most of you will know, is the only Western citizen not repatriated to their country. 31 countries repatriated their citizens from Guantanamo. He's also a young man who entered into Guantanamo with terrible injuries, and he was interrogated from very soon after his surgery. His interrogator was convicted of murder, and he was a U.S. military interrogator. And in Omar Khadr's affidavit, he describes his treatment which at the very least is unusually violent and general mistreatment. And many of us think that it's torture because we don't split hairs about whether or not being kept awake for 3 weeks every 3 hours is bad treatment or it's torture, or being your body being used as a mop. What is that? Or being threatened with rape. What is that? So his story is one of objection, and I'm so glad that you're all here because it's important for us to be here to learn about his story, but it's also important for us to act. I was just talking with Maher Arar, who's here on Skype, and he said it's really time for action. And I wanted to direct you right at the very beginning to a website, which is adealisadeal.omar at Gmail. You can it's an email, but you can if you look up A Deal is a Deal and Omar Khadr, you will find initiatives that are trying to help us gain some action for Omar Khadr. You can also go to change.org, and Romeo Dolaire's petition is there. He's collected more than 30,000 signatures demanding the release of Omar Khadr. And you can find out by going to a Deal is a Deal about the ongoing actions that a group of people are doing in order to try and put more pressure on the government to do something, because it's clear at this point that the only reason Omar Khadr is in Guantanamo is because our government refuses to transfer him. They claim that the Americans delayed, etc., but this is simply not the case at the moment. There's no reason he shouldn't be returned. And in fact, the government, in fact, one person, the public safety minister, and Gail Davidson is going to talk about the Transfer Act that gives him this power. He has the power to decide whether or not Omar Khadr comes back, that one man. And he doesn't have to actually explain to anyone on what criteria he makes that decision. So if any of you are handy with letters, please do write to Vic Taves, write letters to your editor, write to Stephen Harper, and we'll try to collectively put pressure on. You can also send a birthday letter to Omar Khadr by going to the Amnesty International Canada site. They have you can enter your name and address and write a letter, and it will get to Omar Khadr in Guantanamo. The cover of my anthology, which is for sale over there, is actually two photographs from the interrogation tapes that were done in one of his Guantanamo interrogations by the military, U.S. military. And the only reason we have access to these videotapes, some of you, they're available on YouTube, and if you go to youdontlikethetruth.com, you'll find a wonderful film called You Don't Like the Truth by Montreal filmmakers. The screenplay is actually in my book. It's really a wonderful piece of work. And in this diptych, you see a dialogue, really. You see an image of something that is really a diptych displaying the prisoner Omar Khadr's gestures of despair in a freeze-framed record of his traumatic breakdown. Omar Khadr's critics look at this pictures and they see a man who has been justifiably treated. They see someone who has been is a terrorist, and he's been treated the way terrorists should be. They should be exiled and abandoned. But neither an innocent nor a victim, he is for these people an enemy in a battlefield located elsewhere. His punishment cleanses us all. But others see Omar Khadr as a man, at first a boy, whose last decade has been barely a life. A Canadian citizen and child soldier, Omar Khadr speaks back to many of us in the troubling echo of our national anthem's opening words. The title of my anthology is Omar Khadr, O Canada, and I included the phrase O Canada as a direct address that asks us to reflect on what has been done in our name during the era of Omar Khadr, not only to the person, Omar Khadr, but to our country. To what world am I being released? Omar Khadr asked in a 2010 letter to his lawyer. And we might add, to what country will Omar Khadr be returned should Vic Taves, the reluctant man, ever actually allow him to come here? Over the past decade, we have rarely heard Omar Khadr's own words. Usually his legal counsel speaks for him. But in a letter written to Edmonton lawyer Dennis Edney, we encounter his voice as he probes what matters to him, and he explores a possible future outside of prison. He writes, Omar Khadr writes, "You always say that I have an obligation to show the world what is going on down here, and it seems that we've done everything, but the world doesn't get it. So it might work if the world sees the US sentencing a child to life in prison. It might show the world how unfair and sham this process is. Justice and freedom have a very high cost and value, and history is a good witness to it." When he writes in the same letter, "I hate being the head of the spear," the metaphor hurts. While a child soldier can act in a lethal way, the thrust of the arm originates elsewhere. And it is clear that Omar Khadr is the head of our government's spear, an instrument that shows how our government is appealing to a base that wants us to be tough on crime and wants us to step up militarization in our nation. With Omar Khadr, we have the baby face of an enemy caught, contained in Guantanamo. After the plea bargain in October of 2010, newspaper reporters started calling Omar Khadr a convicted war criminal, a convicted killer. Sometimes these are the same journalists who are in Guantanamo reporting on the case, who knew how the situation in Guantanamo, the military commission, was a sham, was a kangaroo court, and still they called him a terrorist and a killer. And nowadays we have the narrative drive of Sun Media propels the conversation in terms that seem shameful to many. Recently we've heard much of Vic Taves or Ezra Levant or Ezra Taves, Vic Levant. We're not quite sure who this person is who's speaking. We've heard a lot of talk about Michael Wellner, who was hired during the military commission to be the Guantanamo prosecution witness. And he is a forensic psychiatrist who bases his forensic psychiatry on the category evil. Now, forensic psychiatrists would see a kind of, their work as science. And one wonderful essay in the American Journal of Forensic Psychiatry analyzes Michael Wellner's forensic psychiatry system, which is a depravity scale, which condemns people on the basis of evil. And that is a moral and a theological term. It is, in fact, what was used to put witches on the fire heap. They were considered to be evil, not a scientific term. Fortunately, just now, you can on the Maclean's website, if you go there, you can find documents that are psychiatric reports from other psychiatrists who examined Omar Khadr, including Stephen Xenakis, spelled with an X, who spent about 300 hours talking with Omar Khadr. Michael Wellner, who is Vic Taves and Ezra Levant's star prosecution forensic psychiatrist, spent 8 hours with Omar Khadr. Stephen Xenakis, who is a specialist in child psychiatry, spent over 300 hours with Omar Khadr. He has very different things to say about him. And the reports that are there are actually very affirming of Omar Khadr's resilience, of his curiosity about life, about their feelings that, in fact, he would be a very good candidate to exit the prison system and could enter into a program of education, etc., in order to reemerge into society. One of my friends and colleagues in Edmonton, where I live, is the former dean of arts at King's University College, and she has been, for the last 4 years, corresponding with Omar, and she set up an educational program for him, and he is reading books like Nelson Mandela and Gandhi and novels, and he is writing stories and writing essays, and he didn't ever get an education after grade 8, so this is a really radical upgrading program. And it's quite remarkable, the things that he's been writing. Some of those have been published, actually, in the newspaper, in the Edmonton Journal, and I presume here in Vancouver. So whenever you hear stories about who Omar Khadr is, just remember that no one knows who Omar Khadr is yet, in a way. He is just emerging into the world. And one of the tragedies of Guantanamo, some people have called it a black hole, is that it is, as one critic calls it, organized oblivion. That is, people who enter there are silenced. They are not allowed to represent themselves. So I hope that you will pursue some of those initiatives I suggested, and that you'll enjoy the rest of the evening.